Nearly 2,000 feet down, in the dark water northwest of San Juan, Puerto Rico, a sonar operator aboard a research vessel called the Fugro Brasilis watched a shape resolve on the screen that shouldn't have still existed, broken into two pieces, roughly the size and outline of a large four-engine aircraft, resting where it had been sitting, undisturbed, for 74 years. This was June 2nd, 2026. And with that single sonar return, one of the longest-running unresolved wreck location questions in American commercial aviation history was illuminated. It was never a matter of what happened to PanAm Flight 526A, but where it actually had rested on the ocean floor. Let's be clear about what kind of mystery this always was. PanAm Flight 526A was never a case like a vanished Navy patrol plane or a jetliner that flew off its own flight plan into the wrong ocean. Investigators in 1952 knew almost immediately what brought the aircraft down. A mechanical failure, a forced water landing 9 minutes after takeoff, off the coast of Puerto Rico. The cause was never really in dispute. What was missing, for 3/4 of a century, was the wreck itself. A precise place on the seafloor where a Douglas DC-4 named Clipper Endeavour had been resting since Good Friday, 1952. Unseen by anyone, unreached by anyone, its exact coordinates lost the moment it slipped under the waves. That's the story we're telling today. Not why it went down, where it went, and why it took 74 years to find it. Here's what we know about the afternoon it was lost. At 12:11 p.m. on April 11, 1952, the airplane departed Isla Grande Airport in San Juan, bound for Idlewild Airport in New York, carrying 64 passengers and 5 crew. 2 engines on the right wing failed in quick succession shortly after takeoff. Captain John C. Byrne, already a survivor of one prior aviation disaster nearly a decade earlier, turned back toward the airport and dumped fuel. But the aircraft couldn't hold altitude. 9 minutes after leaving the runway, with the coast of Puerto Rico visible but unreachable, he ditched the DC-4 in rough Atlantic swells roughly 11 miles northwest of the airport. Every one of the 69 people aboard survived that impact. What happened in the water afterward? No standardized pre-flight safety briefing, a language barrier, panic, sharks, heavy seas is its own tragedy, and it's why only 17 people made it out alive. But all of that happened in full view of witnesses, boats, and rescue aircraft. The basic cause was understood almost immediately. The location of the wreck itself, however, was not. Think about what finding an aircraft actually requires in open ocean. You need a search area small enough to be practical, and a seafloor detailed enough to distinguish wreckage from rock, coral, and centuries of accumulated debris. In 1952, neither of those things existed in any meaningful way. Search boats and aircraft covered the surface in the days after the crash, recovering survivors and, grimly, some of the dead. But nobody had the tools to systematically map 2,000 feet of ocean floor across an 11-mile radius. The wreck didn't need to travel far to disappear. It just needed depth, time, and the absence of a reason for anyone to come looking with the right equipment. For decades, that's exactly what happened. Other, more famous disappearances absorbed the attention and the funding that deep search missions require. PanAm 526A, despite being one of the deadliest air disasters in Puerto Rican history, known on the island as the La Tragedia del Viernes Santo, the Good Friday tragedy, simply didn't have an active organization chasing its coordinates. It became a known story with an unknown resting place, filed away, mourned locally, but never physically located. That changed when the Air Sea Heritage Foundation took up the search. What makes their approach worth walking through is how it layered old evidence over new technology. They didn't simply drop a search grid over the open Atlantic and hope for the best. Investigators went back to 1952 itself, pulling survivor testimony about where the aircraft actually touched down, cross-referencing it against military witness position reports filed in the hours after the ditching. People who had watched the whole thing happen, from boats, from the shore, from search aircraft overhead, and had noted, however roughly, where it occurred. 70-year-old eyewitness accounts and archival records became the starting point for a modern search grid. Onto that historical framework, the team layered autonomous underwater drones, deployed from the Fugro Bacillus, running high-resolution sonar sweeps across the seafloor in patterns no 1952-era search boat could have managed. Sonar can cover enormous stretches of ocean floor methodically, building a picture of what's down there long before anyone commits to sending a camera. It was this combination of decades-old eyewitness geography paired with drone-driven sonar mapping that let the team narrow a broad stretch of open Atlantic down to roughly 10 square nautical miles. And on June 2nd, they found it. Remarkably, the first sonar survey pass through the refined search area revealed an aircraft-shaped object nearly 2,000 feet down, split into two distinct sections, resting near each other on the seafloor. That alone would have been a significant result, but sonar can only tell you so much. A shape on a screen could, in theory, be almost anything, roughly the right size and profile. So the team sent cameras down. What came back? Settled it completely. On the hull of the larger section, the Pan American Winged Globe logo was still visible. So was the aircraft's name, Clipper Endeavour, still legible on the metal. 2,000 feet of cold, dark salt water and decades of currents and marine growth didn't hide the identifying marks still there to be read by a camera lens lowered down to meet them. The wreck's condition even lines up with what witnesses described from the water in 1952. The tail section separated from the rest of the aircraft. The main fuselage staying comparatively intact, now visible on the seafloor exactly as survivors once described it from memory. It's a rare thing, getting physical, present-day confirmation of eyewitness accounts, and this search delivered it. So what happens to a wreck once it's finally found after this long? Doesn't get raised, and there's no expectation that it will be. The value here isn't in bringing Clipper Endeavour back to the surface. It's in finally being able to point to a specific location on a map and say, that's where it is. That's where it's been the entire time. The Air Sea Heritage Foundation has described the site as an important piece of cultural heritage, and the discovery has shifted the project to a preservation effort, protecting the coordinates, documenting the site, treating it the way a maritime historian would treat any confirmed wreck of significance, rather than the way a salvage operation treats a target. For the people connected to this crash, the families who have carried the Good Friday tragedy across 3 generations now, that seafloor location is not a small thing. It doesn't change what happened to the 52 people who didn't survive that afternoon in 1952. The loss of life cannot be amended, but the discovery of the aircraft brings a note of closure to the tragedy of so long ago. The decades-old absence now exists on a chart, at a depth, in 2 sections, with its name still readable on the hull.